Okay, let's review the World Cup draw for next year's World Cup. It's a really interesting draw. How it's all how the nations have been pulled out the hat. There's still six nations yet to qualify. There are six playoffs that several nations have to go through. So not everyone's qualified yet, but we now know what the structures of the groups are going to look like. And It's really interesting. There's some real big nations that have yet to qualify. And I've still got to go through the playoff process. But without any further ado, let's dive in. So Group A has got co-host Mexico with South Africa and South Korea, and the winner of the UEFA playoff Group D, which contains Denmark, Czech Republic, Ireland and North Macedonia. Obviously, we want the Irish to do rather well and get to the World Cup. But there's some big nations there, like Denmark and the Czech Republic. I mean, these are nations that have got history within the game. The Danes and the Czechs have obviously both won Euros in the past. And, there's some really good players who could miss out on the World Cup should they not qualify. So that's going to be really interesting to see what happens in March with the UEFA playoff Group D. That's going to be really, really interesting to see how it actually comes out of that bit of the format. Group B, co-host Canada. Whoever wins the UEFA playoff B group section, which is Italy, Wales, Bosnia and Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, it's for definite one of either Wales or Northern Ireland is definitely not going to qualify, which is a shame. And again, we have to see what happens next March. Northern Ireland got into that position by their Nations League campaign. Wales have improved, I think, under Craig Bellamy as the head coach. They have improved with the resources that they have. Italy, that'd be a big shock if they fail to make it. Bosnia, they've been to the World Cup before, but Italy would be a massive shock if they were to fail to make it to the World Cup. Also in this group is the former host Qatar, the host of the last World Cup, and Switzerland. So I think this is potentially one of the weaker groups. I think Canada have a very, very good chance to actually have a good run in this tournament. They've got a weaker group there. Group C, the legends of international football, Brazil, Morocco, Haiti and Scotland. And last time Scotland were at the World Cup in 1998, they had Morocco and Brazil in their group and they failed to get out of the group. And I remember that World Cup very, very well. Haiti haven't been to the World Cup for a very, very long time. But the way Scotland play, I think they could trouble Brazil and Morocco. Morocco obviously made the semi-finals in Qatar. And Brazil, I don't think they're the Brazil side of years past. But it's going to be tough for Scotland, but it's doable. I think Scotland can potentially get out of this group, potentially as third place finishes. We just don't know because some of the third place teams in groups will progress to the knockout stages. Group D, co-host USA with Paraguay. Good to see them back at the World Cup. Australia. And whoever comes out of the UEFA playoff Group C section, which contains Turkey, Slovakia, Kosovo and Romania. That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one with those nations there. Turkey got some good players, but at the moment Turkey's going through a lot of gambling scandal in their domestic league. Slovakia and Romania have got some good players. Kosovo, they're the unknown in that playoff section. So it'll be interesting to see who makes it out of the UEFA playoff Group C section. Again, I think a slightly weaker group there, if I'm being honest. The US haven't really set the world on fire in international football lately. Canada are the best team out of the three co-hosts, in my opinion, right now with how they're playing and how they're building and improving. Group E, Germany have got an easier group. And Germany have struggled in recent tournaments. They're not the Germany of 2014. They have slipped back to earth and look pretty average at times. They are slowly improving again, but Germany, Curaçao, who are a Dutch colony, or a Dutch territory in the Caribbean, World Cup debutants, of course, Ivory Coast and Ecuador. Ivory Coast and Ecuador are not the teams they were back in the 2000s either. That's an easier group, I think, for Germany in Group E. I think that could be a very wide open, interesting and fun group to watch, to be honest. Group F has got the Netherlands, Japan, whoever comes out of the UEFA playoff B section, which is Ukraine, Poland, Albania and Sweden. That's a very tough one to call. There's some good nations there. Sweden have massively underperformed in qualifying. There's a lot of questions over the Swedish setup and what's gone wrong there. It'd be kind of cool to see Ukraine make it to the World Cup with everything that's going on. Albania, they actually really did impress me in their qualifying group. They came second to England. They actually really challenged England and have massively improved since the early days in the 2000s, they've massively improved over the last 2 decades as a nation, and they've started to qualify for tournaments now. Poland, again, a bit disappointing that they haven't gone through automatically, so there's been some disappointment there. I think Albania are the dark horses out of the UEFA playoff B section, and Tunisia, who are just World Cup stalwarts at this point. Japan, I think, have a good chance to potentially have a little run as well. The Netherlands are favourites for that group, no doubt, but I don't think it'll be as plain sailing as they think. Group G's got Belgium, Egypt, Iran and New Zealand. Belgium are obviously favourites to get out of that group and top that group, but I think there'll be some difficult games. Belgium have underperformed at recent tournaments, considering that the talent that they've got at their disposal. Is this the real last chance saloon for the golden generation, or what's left of it? They've promised much over the last decade, 15 years. They get to a semi-final at the 2018 World Cup, and it hasn't really just pushed on. They haven't achieved what they could have achieved with the group of players and the talent they've got available. So this is last chance saloon, I think, for Belgium. Group H, Spain, Cape Verde, debutants, Saudi Arabia and Uruguay. Spain-Uruguay is going to be a tasty matchup, I think. I think that's going to be a tasty matchup. Spain are not as invincible, I think, as people think they are. There are some weaknesses in this Spain side. Yes, they won the last Euros and did it quite well, but they weren't fully fluid in that final. They looked a little bit slower in that final against England, but this is the best Europe has to offer. But I think Spain are vulnerable. I don't think they're going to run away and necessarily be finalists in this World Cup. I do think there are some vulnerabilities in this Spain side. This Spain side is not as good as the great Spain side of the 2000s and 2010s. I still think they've got some fantastic players. Let's not kid ourselves, but I don't think this Spain side is as invincible as Spain sides that have gone before. In saying that, before they won the World Cup the last time, they did win the Euros before. So, bear that in mind. But I think Uruguay-Spain will be a real tasty encounter in that group. And Cape Verde are just, well, they could do anything. Saudi Arabia, they've had their moments at World Cups where they pulled off some shocks. So that could be a very interesting group. I think Spain, Uruguay will be the top two. And then potentially one of those other nations could get through as a best third-place team. Group I, France, Senegal, the FIFA Playoff 2 section, which is Iraq, Bolivia and Suriname, and Norway. Norway have a very, very good chance to get out the group stage in this group. I really do. I think France, they seem to pull it out of the bag at major tournaments, but sometimes they can be a bit clunky. And Senegal, last time Senegal was in France's group, considering they beat them in the opening game of the 2002 World Cup, when much was expected of the France team that took the field in that tournament. Yes, obviously France have been back to finals, obviously winning a World Cup and all this, been to the last two finals as well. But there comes a point where, are they on the decline? Is Mbappe really, gonna kick on? And it's an interesting one. Senegal have always been a bogey side for France, and Norway haven't been at a major tournament for a very long time. Yes, they've got Haaland, and there will be that discussion around Haaland in big games and can he transition from the club game into the international game at a World Cup, and we don't know who the next nation's going to be. Iraq, Bolivia, Suriname, they are three very weak teams. So the three teams that have already qualified could be the three teams that get out of the group into the knockout stages. Group J has got Argentina, the holders, Algeria, Austria and Jordan. That's an interesting one. Argentina showed at the last World Cup. They had a slow start against Saudi Arabia, and people were questioning whether they were going to go on and ultimately win the tournament, which they did. But there were times where they didn't look overly convincing at the last World Cup. Now, I think Austria are a solid side. Ralf Rangnick has got them massively improved. Algeria, they've got some very talented players. Jordan are the unknown. They haven't qualified for a World Cup for a very, very long time. And it'll be interesting to see how they play and how they adapt to playing basically against European-based players. So that'll be interesting. And what surprises they can throw up, or are they just there, to make up the numbers? Group K has got Portugal, Whoever comes out of the FIFA playoff Group 1 section, which is the DR Congo, Jamaica and New Caledonia, Uzbekistan, debutants, and Colombia. Colombia have got some fantastic players, South American players. The skill set that South American players have, and also the aggression that they have as well. People forget. People think South American football is all samba football. There's a lot of aggression and nastiness there as well. They will disrupt and get a bit of needle into the opposition. Uzbekistan, they're debutants, so anything could happen with them. They're a big unknown. And whoever comes out of that FIFA playoff section, DR Congo, Jamaica and New Caledonia, it's going to be interesting. I think that's a very easy... I think Portugal are favourites for that group. Colombia are, that Portugal-Colombia game is going to be very, very interesting. But that's also one of the weaker groups. And that is a concern with this World Cup. Is there are some weaker groups that some nations could quite easily steamroll. We could have some blowout scorelines. I am not suggesting that's going to happen, but that potentially could happen. And then, of course, the final group, who have to wait the longest, which I think is actually potentially one of the tougher groups, is England, Croatia and Ghana. They're three top nations. Panama obviously played England at the 2018 World Cup, so this is their second appearance. That's a tough group. There's a lot of memories of 2018. England, Croatia, obviously the semi-final. England, Panama. Ghana have obviously gone on various runs as well at the tournament in the past. That's actually a very tough group. That's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for Croatia or England. I think Panama will seek to disrupt and be disruptive in a way of structure, defence, zonal marking, restricting the space. Croatia, could you argue they're still an ageing team? Are they the team they were back in 2018 and before? Because Croatia, for a nation their size, continues to produce world-class players. Ghana are very exciting. I always like seeing the Ghanaians do well at the Africa Cup of Nations. They're a very exciting team, very unpredictable team. So it'd be very, very interesting. But they have to wait the longest before they get their campaign kicked off. Mexico and Canada, as the two co-hosts, will be kicking off their groups earlier in the group stage. The US have to wait a little bit. The concern I have with this World Cup, there are some tougher groups than others. The concern I have is we could see some blow-up scorelines. I think the weather could have a big impact. We saw that earlier this year at the FIFA Club World Cup. What will the crowds be like, considering obviously the politics at the moment with the US, the geopolitics with the US and their immigration policy? And we can, that's a big debate. And I think that also had an impact on the FIFA Club World Cup a little bit. Obviously, this is a World Cup, and of course, people are going to book their tickets. They are going to travel. But there could be some restrictions for some nations where it might be difficult for fans because of the nations they're from, like Iran, for example. Not necessarily the US's best friend. That could put a bit of a roadblock in the way for some of their fans. Haiti, obviously, what's going on with Haiti. There's a big Haitian community already in the US, so I expect a lot of their diaspora would probably, a lot of the Haitian community will probably turn out to support Haiti. But there are some countries who have qualified that aren't on the best of terms with the US when it comes to diplomacy. So I have a concern about accessibility for some fans as a thing. Price of tickets, that's come up as well. Some of the ticket prices that are already being quoted and expected for next year's tournament, that raises some eyebrows. The big concern I have is the conditions, the heat, thunderstorms, that kind of thing, weather delays, and the potential for some lopsided scorelines, which in this day and age shouldn't be a thing. But I actually think that some of the lesser nations who qualified, like your Haitis, for example, Cape Verde, that they could be on the end of some thumpings. However, we've seen some lesser known nations go on runs and be underdogs and be difficult and actually really equip themselves very, very well. But we've seen some horror stories in the World Cup in the past with some massive blowout scorelines, and that is a concern. But there we go. There's the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw in review. Obviously, a lot of people have made comment about the length of time it took to get the draw done, the over unnecessary length of the time, the celebrity side of things, Infantino being, just a grubby individual. It's my personal opinion. I think Infantino is probably more corrupt than Blatter, who went before him. And just the whole... I didn't watch the draw live. I'm doing the video today, but there's a lot of criticism over the format, the seedings of nations. The fact that not all the nations have even qualified yet and they're already doing the draw, I'm not a big fan of that personally. I think all the nations, when it comes to like March time, that's when the draw should be done. But I understand for preparation's sake and training camps and base camps for teams, I understand that. But there we go. There is the FIFA World Cup draw. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.